This movie is about a tough 911 operator who takes steps outside of her job description, all to make sure a little girl is safe. This LAPD 911 operator's name is Jordan Turner. She's been on the job for years and can be considered very good at what she does. She is on a normal day at work when she takes a break with her boyfriend, Officer Paul. They're on the roof of the building exchanging love kisses. She invites him over to her place for the night, and they both seem thrilled. Jordan gets back to work all happy, probably energized from all those kisses. As soon as she's ready to receive 911 calls, she gets a girl crying in fear. The girl tells Jordan that an unknown man is breaking into her home and she is home alone. The girl says she is armed and does not know what to do. Jordan finds out her name is Leah Templeton. She quickly sends a police car, but they are not close to the scene. When the man breaks the window and jumps into the home, Jordan thinks fast and tells Leah to run to a room and lock it. Leah runs up to her room and sees the lock is not working. Jordan then tells Leah to open her window, throw her shoes out, then hide somewhere in her room. Leah listens desperately and does exactly so. The man enters Leah's room and checks under the bed and in the closet. When he notices the window open, he checks and sees Leah's shoes on the grass outside. He stresses out and quickly runs out of her room and down the stairs. He believes that she escaped out of the window. The plan was a success until Leah accidentally ends the call with Jordan. Without thinking clearly, Jordan quickly calls back, causing Leah's phone to ring. The man hadn't left the house yet, and when he hears the ring, he runs back up the stairs. Leah shakes in fear as she hears the footsteps coming back up the stairs. The man finds her and pulls her out of her hiding spot. He then grabs the phone and starts to breathe heavily into it, as though he had a couple of donuts before climbing back up the stairs. He asks who is on the call, to which Jordan responds, "This is 911 operator." She also tells him to let Leah go and he should not do anything to her. He breathes some more into the phone, then says, "It's already done," and hangs up. Jordan just sits there, unable to process what just happened. She runs to the quiet room and cannot take in the fact she messed up by calling Leah back. She desperately wants Leah to be saved. Unfortunately, the next day Leah was announced missing and feared to be deceased during the news broadcast. This shocking news causes Jordan to break down mentally, so she goes and has a talk with her boyfriend Paul and tells him the advice her father had told her. She says that being in a job like this requires one to be strong enough to handle that their actions can be the difference between life and death. She makes the decision there and then to take a break and not be an operator anymore. 6 months later, Jordan is seen teaching newbies how to be a 911 operator. One of these new bloods is so annoying and keeps asking stupid questions, but she takes it so well though. Lord knows I would have given him that sweet chin music. She explains to them how the operator's building is known as the Hive, and if the Hive breaks down, the whole city breaks down. She takes them below into the Hive where they get to see operators in action. A rookie operator, Brooke, gets an overwhelming call and looks to Jordan for help. Jordan freezes on the spot and doesn't know whether to take the call or not. She finally decides to take Brooke's spot and get to the call. The call is from a teenage girl, Casey, who was caught in the trunk of a car. She tells Jordan how she was at the city mall with her girlfriend. She was leaving into the parking lot when someone she describes as a white man in his 40s shoved her into his red-maroon car. Her normal phone had broken when he scared her, so the phone she is using to talk to the operators is her friend's old untraceable phone. Her friend had forgotten it at the table, and she had taken it to give it back to her at a later time. It's crazy to think that if her friend hadn't forgot her burner phone, Casey would have had no way of reaching the police. Jordan tries to trace the phone, but it would take so much time. She tells her supervisor that they need Casey on the phone as long as they can in order to get a trace. As Casey is stuck in the trunk, she manages to calm her down by bringing up that they are both Capricorns. She says that Capricorns are fighters and they are going to fight to get her out. She gets Casey to explain what she sees in the trunk. Jordan learns it is an old automobile and tells Casey to kick out a tail light, so she uses a roller paintbrush to kick the light out. Casey sees that she is on the freeway and lets Jordan know. With this information, she alerts the police. She then tells her to stick her arm out of the tail light hole and wave. A woman sees Casey's arm and calls 911. This is a huge help because now they get a location on where Casey is. The woman wants to help get a description of the man by driving closer to the vehicle and making it super obvious she is eyeing him. Her operator tries to warn her not to do this, yet she is reckless and doesn't listen. This gets the man's attention, so being suspicious, he decides to exit off the freeway. Jordan thinks fast and asks Casey if there is anything else in the trunk she can use to her aid. Casey tells her all she can see is paint cans and then begins to cry when she finds a shovel behind them. So she tries to calm Casey down again by asking her what her favorite movie is. When Casey answers, Bridesmaids, Jordan promises to take her out to watch the movie when she is saved. Casey then listens to her and opens up the paint can and starts to spill it out the taillight hole. This catches the attention of another driver, Alan. He waves at the man and lets him know of the paint coming out of his trunk. This angers the man, and he swerves into an area where he forcefully opens the trunk and yells at Casey. He attempts to put her to sleep, but Alan had followed him. He steps out of his car and asks the man if he needs any help. He then notices the man's weird behavior. When Alan gets back into the car, he pulls out his phone and calls 911. But before the call gets on air, the man slams his car window with a shovel. He then proceeds to beat Alan up until he goes unconscious. The man then steals his Lincoln Town car and puts both Casey and Alan in the trunk. As she tells Jordan what had happened, Alan wakes up and freaks out. He starts to scream hysterically and pound on the trunk. Casey tries to tell him to stop, yet he doesn't seem to hear her through his screams. The man hears the screams all right, so he quickly stops the car and puts a permanent end to Alan's screams. After witnessing that event, Casey is left traumatized. The man soon realizes the car is almost out of gas and stops at a station. While he's filling the car, Casey tells Jordan she has an idea. She notices how the car's back seat can be accessed through the trunk, so she tries to squeeze her little body through and attempts to get a worker's attention. The worker seems oblivious until she starts to yell for help. He then pulls out a weapon and goes to open the car door to save Casey, but the man locks the doors. The worker slowly steps forward and threatens the man as he gets closer to the broken window in hopes of unlocking the car. The man thinks fast and takes out the gas gun and soaks the worker. He then pulls out a lighter and gets rid of the worker. He opens the trunk, pulls Casey back in, and closes the trunk. The incident at the gas station catches police attention, and they have an idea of where Casey might be. They still haven't gotten an exact location on her. While Casey is unconscious, the police find the abandoned red car the man had ditched. They get his fingerprints and find his identity to be Michael Foster. He is a married man and has 2 children. Police invade his home and question his wife, who seems unaware. She keeps on repeating that her husband would never do such a thing. As the police were searching Foster's home, they find numerous pictures of him as a kid with a beautiful blonde girl. The blonde girl turns out to be his sister, and she looked exactly like Casey. Officer Paul could tell there was some connection to this, but couldn't put a finger on it. Meanwhile, Jordan hears Casey being pulled out the trunk. Michael is stunned to see the burner phone in her back pocket. He put it to his ear and breathes into it. He then asks who is on the other end. Jordan replies saying it is a 911 operator. She reveals to him that authorities know his identity and are at his home with his family. She tells him it is over, so he should turn himself in and let the girl go. Michael breathes into the phone some more and replies, "It's already done." The phone disconnects as Jordan freaks out, discovering he is the same man who was at Leah's home. While police are still at Foster's home, they find out he owns an old cabin out in the woods. They raid it in hopes to find Casey, but they find it completely empty and leave. Jordan is upset to hear the news. She really hopes Casey is going to be found because all this seemed far too familiar. In her desperation, she continues to listen to the phone call between her and Michael over and over again to find any clues. She had made Casey a promise which was against the rules in her job. Meanwhile, Michael had Casey strapped to a chair in an unknown underground area. He had tied her in a foldable wheelchair and then started the preparation for hair removal after sedating her. Jordan doesn't give up trying to help Casey and drives up to the cabin herself. There she finds boxes filled with photos of Michael with his sister. The pictures showed her progression during her sickness before she passed. Jordan also notices how his sister looked exactly like Casey, especially the bright blonde hair. She finally gives up and decides to leave the cabin. When she steps out, she heard the ding of a flagpole. She had heard this sound before when she was on the call with Michael. She quickly follows the sound and finds a trap door. Jordan opens the door and pulls her phone out to call 911, but her phone falls in the cellar and loses service, causing the call not to go through. She climbs down to get the phone, and instead of going back up to finish the call, she walks in deeper. She begins to hear Michael's voice panting. Jordan runs to hide from him and gets into a room. She uses her phone flashlight to take a look around and feels disgusted by what she sees. As Jordan opens the refrigerator, she sees it is full of what looks like blonde wigs, with some being on the heads of mannequins. One particular hair on the mannequin catches her attention. She recognized it by the purple string of color unique to Leah. It has become clear to Jordan that Michael had unnatural feelings towards his blonde sister, who had passed from leukemia. When she had died, she also lost her beautiful blonde hair, which Michael now peels off of his victims to relive the moment when his sister was alive. Jordan then finds Casey and slams Michael's head as he was trying to surgically remove off Casey's hair. He falls unconscious, and she saves Casey. They both run out of the underground trap, and Jordan reaches for her phone, But before she dials 911, Casey stops her because she has a better idea. Both Jordan and Casey tie Michael to the foldable wheelchair with chains. They also tightly tie his hands with duct tape. When he finally awakens, he realizes that they have played the Uno reverse, so he asks when the police are going to show up. This is when Jordan and Casey look at each other with a smirk. Casey then explains sarcastically how she actually escaped from Michael and how Jordan found her, and how Michael was never seen again. The movie ends as Jordan and Casey walk out the door. Michael yells, "You're just an operator, you can't do this!" To which Jordan replies, "It's already done." The next movie is called The Sun. Lorenzo and Sigrid express their love for each other, after which he goes to work at his studio where he intensely works on a painting. She soon joins him and expresses her wish not to follow him to meet his friends later on, but Lorenzo is adamant she come as they want to meet her. That evening, the couple make their way to Renato's house, who welcomes his old friend. They are interrupted when Julieta comes out to Lorenzo's surprise. She gives him a warm embrace and peck on the cheek as Sigrid watches on, a little annoyed. The artist introduces her to his wife. Lorenzo was her art professor some years ago. It's also revealed that Julieta and Renato are currently in a relationship as they make their way into the house. Lorenzo informs Renato that he's working on an art collection based on his wife's experiments, but she corrects him that they are studies as she is a biologist from Denmark who came to finish her doctorate on mollusks and echinoderms. He's helping her build a lab in their basement. Renato notices that the couple is drinking water and pries too deep, speculating that she's pregnant. They confirm that they are trying for a baby. Renato makes a toast to his old friend's return to the art world and hopes that she becomes pregnant. Julieta and Lorenzo later make their way through the house to pick up Sigrid's coat and bag. He's happy to see that they have one of his pieces on their wall. They have their little catch-up, where it is revealed that she is a lawyer, and she too is trying for a baby with Renato, which is why he was so intense earlier. The conversation moves when she asks about his daughters. However, he alerts her that he doesn't see them anymore as their mother sent them to Canada. Sigrid interrupts their conversation, eager to go home. At a later date, Renato makes a few arrangements for his old friend and has managed to get Lorenzo to show some of his work at a gallery, but the turnout is not fantastic. Sigrid still supports by making Danish snacks for the event. Julieta passes by and apologizes for Renato's lateness as he is closing some business with some other art collectors. The old student and teacher walk through the gallery flirting a little, where it is revealed that they had a romantic relationship in the past. They are interrupted when one of the servants alerts him that his wife needs him. He goes to the back where she informs him that she's pregnant, and it has been so for the past few weeks. Although he's happy, Lorenzo wonders why she didn't tell him earlier. The couple later make their way to a doctor for an ultrasound check, where Sigrid informs him that they are having the baby at home because she feels like it's safer as hospitals have viruses. After the checkup, the doctor advises that they run some more routine tests. She reports that she has a problem with her blood clotting, probably caused by a gene mutation, which could cause complications. The doctor is surprised and asks to know if she too is a doctor, but she alerts him that she's a biologist and has already done all the tests herself, as no one wanted to do them this early. She advises the doctor to get her on some medication, but he alerts her that only after she goes to see the specialist. She complains that it will take too long, she has already had a miscarriage and doesn't want another. Sigrid leaves the office a little annoyed. The doctor offers to tell Lorenzo the gender of the child, but he already knows it's a boy since it's the third specialist they have seen. He tries to assure her that everything will be fine during the car ride home, but she snaps at him before apologizing. The artist just alerts her that they need to get someone to assist with the birth at home, to which she agrees. A couple of months have passed and Sigrid is further along with her pregnancy. She complains to Lorenzo that the smell of his paint is making her feel sick. He apologizes and moves his things to the attic. While up there, he looks down to see that she's self-administering some medication he's not aware of. He keeps a gun up there, so he uses the scope to get a closer look at what she's doing. After confirming his suspicions, he goes down to confront her about it, but she's low-key arrogant, so she dismisses his concerns. He later takes his mind off things by painting his son's room, but cuts his hand while trying to open a can of paint. Lorenzo goes down to tend to his cut, and is met by an old lady speaking Norwegian. His wife introduces her as Gudrun. She helped deliver Sigrid, and was also her nanny growing up. She explains that the old lady will stay with them and help with the delivery, but he doesn't seem comfortable with that idea. Sigrid directs him to her lab where there is a disinfectant and a bandage for him to use. He enters, and is a little disturbed by the research she's doing on embryology, as that is not her field. As time goes on, he feels left out as Sigrid and Gudrun speak in their native tongue, while he sits there oblivious. The artist even struggles to eat their food. Lorenzo excuses himself to bed, but on the way, he checks his son's room to see that it has been repainted and arranged. He comes back down to confront his wife about it, but she says that is what Gudrun recommended, as babies don't like vibrant spaces. He doesn't argue back and goes to sleep. His wife joins him in bed soon after as a storm rages on outside. Lorenzo wakes up later on in the night and realizes Sigrid is not in bed. He makes his way to the bathroom where he hears her screaming. She's in labor, and they have locked the door to prevent the artist from having access. He calls for them to open it as he listens to his wife's cries. Lorenzo ends up sleeping at the door, and the following morning Gudrun opens for him to meet his son. He doesn't comment on the injustice they have just inflicted on him by locking him from witnessing his own child's birth. The artist just savors the moment with his new offspring. A few months have passed since Henrik was born. Julieta and Renato have come around for the first time since his birth. They joke around about how they have kept the child hidden. The couple give him a gift for the child, which Lorenzo appreciates, but he comments about Sigrid's strict rules about Henrik's clothes being 100% cotton with no loud colors. He puts sanitizer on their hands as he prepares to have them meet this new arrival. The couple wait a while to meet him. They start to get fed up waiting and alert Lorenzo that they can come back another time, but he's adamant that they should stay and meet him. He confesses that it's been over 6 months, and neither the mother or the baby has left the room. She and Gudrun are the boy's doctors. They diagnose and treat him inside the room. He barely gets to hold his son. They only allow him 4 opportunities to interact with him, and that's on a good day. The couple look at him like he's a bit unhinged and promise to come back when the tension dies down. They worriedly look at him as he begs them to stay, while he goes back in to bring them out. The artist finally comes out with Sigrid and the baby, and everything looks normal as the little one sleeps. They inform her of the gift, and Lorenzo comments on it not being 100% cotton, but Sigrid behaves like it's not a problem, and thanks them for the gift. This is the opposite response they were expecting based on Lorenzo's accusations, making them doubt him more. He later gets agitated when Henrik is crying too much, so he goes into the room suspecting that he has a fever, but Sigrid gets angry at his presence and tells him to leave. As the days go on, the boy's crying doesn't stop. Lorenzo gets frustrated and storms into the baby's room to take him. The nanny protests in Norwegian, but the dad ignores her. As he prepares to leave, Sigrid enters the house and tries to take her son back, but he pushes her to the floor and rushes the kid to a hospital. The doctor checks him and alerts Lorenzo that it's only a mild fever, so the kid should be fine with rest. He returns home, and the police are at the scene. Sigrid takes him inside, but the artist is prevented from entering because his wife has pressed home fighting charges against him. Later that night, he turns up at his old friend's house drunk, so they give him a place to sleep. The following morning, Julieta informs him that she went to the court on his behalf. He has a 90-day restraining order, and his wife also filed for divorce. Lorenzo protests his innocence, but the evidence is stacked against him, even though he too has wounds from Sigrid's assault. In the eyes of the judge, his wife is a woman with a doctorate who is self-sufficient, while he's a struggling artist with a history of drinking, who couldn't keep a relationship with his daughters. He must wait for the 90 days before anything can be done. The couple give him a room to stay in till the time reaches, and after a long wait, he finally gets the opportunity to visit his son at home. He arrives there after so long away, but he notices some strange vents outside before proceeding to the front door. Gudrun opens the door for him to enter, and his son sits in one of the rooms playing, but Sigrid is nowhere to be found. He greets Henrik and gives him a toy he handmade, but when he looks at his son, Lorenzo's face turns to dread as he comes to the realization that the kid sitting there is not his seed. The artist starts to panic as he shouts around the house looking for Henrik and Sigrid. Gudrun quickly grabs the phone and makes a call. After finding no sign of his family, he tries to pry open the lab door as sirens can be heard outside. The police enter the house and apprehend Lorenzo, breaking his glasses in the process. They send him to jail, and later on, an annoyed Julieta comes to bail him out as he pleads for help. They lead them to a room where she warns him not to talk anymore because he sounds crazy with the statements that he's making. They go to the hearing, and Lorenzo starts with his accusations that the boy he saw was not his son as he begins to get agitated. Reports from the social worker and pediatrician indicated that his son is a normal child, which makes his outbursts all the stranger, so the judge suggests that he gets taken into a psychiatric hospital for diagnosis. After being subject to treatment for a while, Julieta and Renato come to get an update on his condition. The doctor diagnoses him with Capgras syndrome, which led him to think that his child has been exchanged for an identical imposter. After a debrief, they release him under the supervision of the couple. Giulietta informs him in the car that he has been released on probation as long as he keeps going for treatment and stays away from the house, or he'll be going straight to jail. He only cares about his son who's in danger. Giulietta tries to sympathize, but he takes a cheap shot at her, stating that she wouldn't understand because she's not a mother. This cuts deep for the reason that she is having problems conceiving. She retaliates by quitting as his attorney. Renato brings him into his new apartment. Some of his belongings are already there for him, and he gives him his medication and car keys. He finally confronts him about his statement earlier. Lorenzo immediately apologizes, but Renato lets him know that he's on his own from now on. Soon after, he tracks Gudrun as she takes the imposter to the kindergarten. He tries to see that kid, but the teacher sacks him away. He keeps his distance for a while till he receives a letter about the case. He marches over to Giulietta's office with one of his paintings as payment for everything she has done for him. With that gesture, he is back on her good side, so the artist takes the opportunity to formally apologize to her. He asks about her treatment to aid with the reproduction, but she alerts him that they are planning to adopt. He shows her the letter he received. It states that Sigrid would like Lorenzo to have contact with his son, as she feels like he's not a threat to him. The artist wants Giulietta to represent him again for the negotiations, and she agrees. The day of the meeting arrives, and the talks almost break down when Sigrid demands that Henrik be allowed to leave the country to visit extended family. He is reluctant to sign, but he concedes and demands he sees his son the following day. He comes to pick him up with Giulietta. They make their way to the couple's house, where Lorenzo makes them the official godparents of Henrik. He excuses himself to use the washroom while they play with him. He sneaks out of the bathroom window and makes his way back to his old home. The artist climbs his way into the house through the attic and quickly makes his way into the lab while Sigrid and Gudrun converse in another room. Inside the lab, he sees signs that a baby has been kept in there, but is confirmed when he hears a baby's cry. Lorenzo checks and is happy to see that it's his son. Meanwhile, Sigrid sneaks up behind him. She cocks the rifle, which catches his attention. When he turns around, he finds that she's holding him at gunpoint. All the while, the couple notice that Lorenzo has been in the toilet for too long, so they go to check on him. They realize that he has escaped when they get no response. The two make their way to his apartment and find no sign of him, just drawings of his trying to piece together his son's real face. They try his phone, but there is no answer. Later that evening, they make their way to his old house to alert Sigrid of Lorenzo's disappearance. When they knock on the door, there is no answer. Renato notices Lorenzo's car, so Giulietta tries calling his number one last time. When she hears it ringing from the lab, she decides to throw a rock at the window so that she can see inside. What she sees in there deeply upsets her. Soon after, the police are at the house. They break in to find the artist laying there offed. Sigrid shot him and has fled the country. Giulietta cries in the car as her husband drives off with the child in their custody. 2 years later, the couple decide to go to Norway on a family holiday when Giulietta spots Gudrun. She tails her to her house where she sees Sigrid. They make their way inside, allowing her to get closer. She notices the same filter at the house basement and hears a child's voice. She decides to peep through. The look of horror is plastered all over her face when she realizes that Lorenzo was right, which brings the movie to an end. The final movie is called Sniper Assassin's End. It's the night before the signing of a high-profile trade agreement between Costa Verde and the USA, which is spearheaded by Mr. Diaz. As the news broadcast a press conference held by the officials, Yuki plants some evidence in a hotel room before assassinating Mr. Diaz with a well-placed sniper shot to the head as he gives a speech on stage. The aftermath can be seen on a phone she's using to watch a live stream of the conference. With the hit complete, she leaves the room like a ghost. Soon after the incident, Agent Franklin from the FBI receives strict orders from the Secretary of State to covertly sort out this mess. Juliet comes at the perfect time with information that a strand of hair belonging to Sergeant Brandon was at the scene, and flight records show that he flew in and out of Costa Verde within hours of the attack. With such evidence, Franklin officially makes him the prime suspect and orders a team to go to his house, but it has to be low-key because he's part of the USA Army. If word was to get out that he committed the crime, it would be an international problem. They are to find out as much information about the situation and create a safe house near his location when the target has been apprehended. It should be assumed that he's armed and dangerous. However, this is far from reality because Brandon sits at home playing Halo multiplayer and he's getting beaten by a 14-year-old kid. Unbeknownst to him, Yuki pulls up on a bike with a gun, a bottle of pills, and a note. Unfortunately for her, the government breach Brandon's house before her and take him aggressively into custody. She calls her employer to alert him of the situation, but he's not happy because she was to make his death look like a self-annihilation. He alerts Yuki that a team will be sent to take out the convoy, so her job is to make it look like she's an accomplice to Brandon. Meanwhile, he's sent to the safe house where he's interrogated by Franklin. Brandon tries to explain that he's been set up, but the evidence is just too much. They have his DNA at the scene, his flight records, and a motive. It is revealed that his father is a retired serviceman, but he had a mission at Costa Verde that went wrong in the past, so they want to know if he was involved in his little revenge operation. They even have emails that point to this motive. Brandon is dumbfounded by these accusations, but sticks to his belief that he was set up. He explains that he was enjoying his first leave in 5 years. The guy didn't even know an assassination took place. They are interrupted when Agent Zero from Homeland Security arrives and requests to have a private word with Brandon. They feel like he must be given the benefit of the doubt given his admirable service record. Franklin is reluctant, but gives him a minute alone with him. Zero believes in innocent till proven guilty, so he promises to look at this case. He warns him that he will be moved to a black site, and whoever is responsible will probably want to tie up loose ends, so they'll likely attack the convoy. Before Zero leaves, he has a little briefing with Juliet. The FBI believes that only someone with Brandon's skill set could perform a shot from that far distance. He agrees, but he points out the presence of Donald, the CEO of a pharmaceutical company, on stage, which is very odd as it was a political event. During that interval, some Russian mercenaries get a call from the bad guy, but the Russians want the money first before they move an inch. The leader struggles to hear the mastermind as there is a helicopter in the background, but they eventually come to an agreement. The mercenaries get armed and depart just as Brandon is being moved to the black site. Yuki positions herself at the interception location and is under orders to just make sure that the Russians do their job. She's only to intervene as a last resort. As the convoy proceeds, Brandon sees the truck tailing them from behind and tries to alert the transport team, but they dismiss him. Shortly after, they are cut off from the front by another truck and are rammed by the truck from behind when they try to escape. The mercenaries open fire at the car and a gunfight ensues. They kill most of the transport team as Brandon pleads for them to release him so that he can help. As the Russians close in on the car, Brandon manages to grab the keys from the fallen soldier and frees himself. He grabs 2 pistols and shoots the men that try to surround him. Meanwhile, Yuki kills one of the soldiers who has flanked a mercenary. She then tries to kill Brandon, but he manages to stay hidden and uses unconventional means to get the car out to safety. The assassin gets annoyed and shoots the last Russian standing. That evening, Zero interrupts Donald, who is out on a date with his mistress. After introducing himself officially, he learns that the assassination of Diaz hurt the company as their stock prices plummeted. He advises the agent to follow the money as he tries to pin it on a rival company who have more to gain with Diaz's death. At the safe house, Franklin receives word of the attack on the convoy and the Russian mod's involvement. The boss jumps to conclusions again, claiming that Brandon must be working with them. When he's told that one of their men was killed by a sniper, he dives to a conclusion again, pinning it on Brandon's father. The guy is sure he's right, so he tells the team to turn their attention to the father. Juliet receives a report that the transport vehicle was spotted in Aberdeen with their men dead inside. Franklin orders that they gain access to all cameras in that area to try and find him. Meanwhile, Brandon is stopped by local law enforcement. When they catch him trying to break into a car, he swiftly takes them out before asking a nearby witness to drive him out of the city. In the interim, Zero calls Juliet after his encounter with Donald. She updates him on the situation, and he alerts her that the reason why Brandon hasn't brought himself in is that there might be a rat in the department. She gives him a lead that the previous month, an employee at the accounting department tripped an alarm at Donald's company when he tried to access information that was above his clearance level. The police were turned away by the head of security when they received the alarm. Juliet gets berated by her boss when she returns from her toilet break as things are tight at the moment. Meanwhile, just outside the city, Brandon asks the witness to get out of the car and walk back to the city. He promises to take good care of his car before driving off. In the interim, Zero makes the trip to the pharmaceutical company where he meets the head of security named Phoenix. He tries to ask him about the incident the previous month, but he explains it away and alerts him that Strayhorn, the accountant in question, is off work sick. Back at the safe house, they receive the report of the carjacking, but by this time, Brandon has ditched the car and is taking cargo transport to his next location. Juliet receives another call from Zero, who updates her on his visit to the company and asks her to look into Phoenix as he didn't trust the guy at all. Before he can finish his next sentence, she already has information and it looks like he's a ghost. as there is no recent information about him. As she talks on the phone, Franklin sneaks up on her and scolds her for wasting time working with Zero when she's supposed to be looking into his orders. He warns her that the next time the agent calls, she should forward the call to him. Juliet sends him a message alerting Zero that one of the Russian mercenaries survived when they attacked the convoy and he's at the hospital. Zero makes his way over there and forces the doctors to wake him up before aggressively interrogating the mercenary about who hired him to perform the hit. As he screams in pain, he informs him about the helicopter in the background when they were talking. The agent joins Franklin at Brandon's house as they look for evidence. He finds a picture of Brandon which confirms that Phoenix was a part of his unit at some point in the past. He sends this to Juliet. She does a face image search, and it concludes that his real name is Clark. He was wanted for war crimes when he served in the army but died in a battle before they could apprehend him. This revelation makes things a lot more interesting. Zero later tracks down Strayhorn at a parking lot and intimidates him till he confesses to everything. He was forced to help them skim money from the falling stock prices due to the trade agreement not going through, which would enrich Phoenix. The night that the alarm was triggered, he was setting up the offshore account where the illegal money would get dumped. Meanwhile, Brandon gets to his father's place deep inside the woods. The dad sees that he's in trouble just by looking at him. They sit and have a couple of beers as they trade war stories and discuss the situation. The following day, his dad tries to apologize for not always being there physically, but his son doesn't hold a grudge because he knew his father was serving his country. They make their way back inside the cabin when the alarm and secret cameras pick up the soldiers closing in on their location. His dad gives him a sniper rifle and instructs Brandon to take the hidden passage and escape. As the unit close in on the cabin, Zero calls Franklin to alert him about Strayhorn's confession. Simultaneously, the father comes out of his place unarmed. With this new information, Franklin orders his men to stand down. As they stand down, a sniper suddenly starts to take out members of the unit. The dad rushes back into his cabin. Franklin jumps to conclusions again and alerts Zero that Brandon just shot and killed 2 of their men. The veteran sniper finds cover and watches as the unit gets picked apart. Brandon hears the gunshot, so he decides to investigate. He and his dad look around the forest for the shooter, who happens to be Yuki. She sees that both of them are looking for her, so she decides to shoot the hand of one of the soldiers, which triggers his gun to fire, giving her a chance to move to a better location. Brandon regroups with his dad before they start their hunt. As they search, Yuki gets in position to take out Brandon, but his father intercepts by shooting her gun. She drops it and tries to escape, but Brandon gets to her, and a brawl ensues between the two. He gets humbled a bit, but he's saved when his dad holds Yuki at gunpoint, putting an end to the fight, allowing the duo to apprehend her. All the while, Zero infiltrates Phoenix's house, and after some snooping around, he finds the fake passport the security had used to impersonate Brandon, proving that it was him that took the trip to Costa Verde. He also finds a lot of ferry tickets in the bin, so makes his way to the dock to further investigate. The operator services all the islands in the area, but Zero uses the information of a helicopter to narrow it down to 1. He tips the operator to send him there. During that interval, Brandon uses the equipments of the fallen soldiers to get in contact with Franklin and presents Yuki as the culprit who killed their men. He's convinced that she's the one that set him up for Diaz's assassination too. Franklin alerts him that a unit is on the way, so they should hold on tight. Juliet does her thing and finds out that Yuki comes from a criminal family that has had multiple dealings with the Yakuza. She also goes by the nickname Lady of Death. The unit arrives and transports everyone back to the safe house. Brandon is officially acquitted when it is confirmed that Yuki flew in and out of Costa Verde on the day of the attack. He's released, so he and his dad join the team to get to the bottom of this. Brandon comes up with an idea to use himself as bait to get Phoenix's location by pretending that Yuki captured him. She only agrees because the crimes she committed in the USA will be dropped. Brandon also reveals his history with Phoenix. Brandon was the one who reported him for his war crimes, so Phoenix framed him because he wanted revenge. After a quick call, Phoenix drops the meeting location. When he finishes, he spots Zero snooping around and attacks him. After a brief exchange, he quickly subdues the agent, and Donald comes out revealing himself to be the financer of his little operation. He asks Phoenix to apprehend the agent and send him inside. The CEO tries to bribe him to look the other way, but Zero is not moved by money. Donald explains that with the company going down, he had to find means to ensure his golden parachute. Diaz, who was a corrupt politician, was therefore a reasonable sacrifice. They are interrupted when Yuki knocks on the door with her hostage, but she makes a comment about Phoenix and Brandon's past, which gets him on alert because he never told her that information. He asks the two to come inside the house, which goes against the plan. Franklin orders the units to start moving. Meanwhile, inside the building, Phoenix shoots Yuki, suspecting something is wrong. Brandon breaks free from the fake cuffs and begins fighting his ex-squadmate, but he gets overpowered and is taken hostage. However, his dad is in the perfect position to take the shot. After he composes himself and overcomes his past regrets, he takes it and cleanly removes Phoenix out of this world and into the next, leaving his son safe. Yuki tries to use the commotion to escape, but she frees Zero and helps capture Donald. With the area secured, Brandon thanks Zero for the help, but he gives Yuki some of the credit for apprehending the CEO. The father and son reunite again and leave together. Later on, Zero has blocked Yuki's extradition to Japan and proposes that she works for the US government. They shake on it, marking the start of their cooperation. That brings the movie to an end.